I'm Tara Seeley, and I'm a graduate student at UC Berkeley. My idea for the Berkeley Institute of Parks is to increase Indigenous knowledge and cultural resilience in the way we manage landscape-level parks. Landscape-level parks have a history of displacing Indigenous communities. They've often left a legacy of violence and oppression in their wake and been formed at the expense of these communities. In the new ways of envisioning management of parks, we can take steps to address some of the erasure of Indigenous history we've caused by forming our parks. Parks have a tremendous capacity for social impact. Public lands shape the way that society views wilderness and views nature. So we can harness this power of social impact from public parks and redirect it towards the empowerment of Indigenous communities and the elevation of cultural resilience in these landscapes. To begin with, we have to engage and have members of Indigenous communities be leaders of this redirection. By engaging Indigenous communities right from the start, we can make steps to ensure the success and longevity of these management changes. Additionally, by letting Indigenous communities take the lead, we can ensure that cultural values are protected the same way that ecological values are. So to begin, we have to rewrite our history, our environmental histories of park landscapes. We need to make sure that they accurately reflect the relationship between Indigenous communities and the land. We can do this by accessing oral histories, traditional storytelling, and other knowledge sources to make sure that parks truly represent the significant connections that exist between people and place. By doing this, we can envision parks not just as ecological landscapes, but as cultural landscapes. Parks should also be places where Indigenous practices can be carried out and maintained and perpetuated. Right now, current management makes provisions for activities like hiking and like camping. Indigenous practices need to be protected and supported in a similar manner. Additionally, Indigenous communities themselves need to be the ones to regulate and make decisions surrounding these Indigenous practices. The management of natural resources itself is inherently a cultural practice. We need to do a better job about acknowledging this and incorporating Indigenous knowledge into the way that we manage our natural resources. There's a dual benefit to this. Not only will parks have more ecological resilience and thrive ecologically, but they will also become yet another platform for cultural resilience and the perpetuation of Indigenous practices. And finally, parks have a responsibility to ensure that the science that's carried out within park boundaries actually benefits Indigenous communities. Science is often based on Indigenous knowledge. However, scientific publications rarely give the appropriate credit towards Indigenous sources. Additionally, science is rarely communicated back to the communities from which it originated. Parks can make an effort to fix this. Parks can make sure that there are provisions in place that ensure that the flow of information that happens between Indigenous communities and scientists truly goes in both directions. This is a loose framework that can be adapted and tailored towards specific parks and individual Indigenous groups depending on their specific needs. We really need to acknowledge the role that parks have played in the subjugation and oppression of Indigenous groups. But by redirecting and reshaping the way we manage parks, we can take steps in the right direction towards the empowerment of Indigenous communities.